Hey guys, thank you so much for joining the Know Your Worth Hub conversation, where we empower, motivate, educate, and inspire people from all walks of life. Today we have an amazing guest joining us, advocating for mental health, Miss Hani. I'm your host, Chalada, and I have my guest host today with me, Miss Maya. But we are happy to have Miss Hani. Hani, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. How are you guys?
We're good. We're good. We're really excited. I'm excited for this conversation. I know
Same.
Maya talking about it earlier. So let's jump right into it. What inspired you to become an advocate for mental health?
I would say my inspiration came from my experiences with being the oldest in my family and having like younger siblings kind of navigate and go through life. And then so they would kind of put themselves in predicaments and things like that. I've always been exposed to people who have had mental health conditions, but the community that I come from doesn't necessarily know how to interact with them and deal with them. So that kind of inspired me to get into doing the work. And it started with me pursuing like a psychology degree and kind of going from there. But yeah.
Awesome. That's really good. So you said this was something that you noticed first with your family. How old were you when you noticed that mental health was like an issue that your family had?
I would say I was in high school. So it was a lot of like things that young girls would deal with, right? So insecurity issues, not knowing what to do in terms of what's culture to practice more of. Like, do you practice the American culture? Do you practice the Somali culture? So kind of identifying that so you don't have somewhat of a identity crisis per se. So for me, it was being the older sister and then my younger sister navigating and her asking me questions of what does it look like to be like Somali American, and kind of going through that journey with her and helping her understand that a bit better.
Yeah, I like the fact that you brought that up, Hani. I think you and I were having a conversation and we were talking about, there's this huge stigma within the Black community, especially, our community as well, the Somali community, where mental health is a taboo. Now, how have you been able to kind of navigate around that, considering, it's almost shameful to speak about it, or, you are looked down on if you are suffering from some sort of a mental illness if you do actually speak up about it?
I think people, for me, it was like understanding why people are so resistant to it, to better help them be educated on the matter, right? So people are afraid of what they don't know. And so the
Absolutely.
biggest thing to do is to educate. So the only way
Mhm.
you can educate is to not make it something that is like crazy, something to fear, something to be like afraid of. And just make it like normalizing it as much
Right.
normalcy as you can bring to the topic at hand in the conversation. It puts
Mhm.
the other person at ease and just saying like, hey, like I went through my own mental health issues. Mental health is not only having schizophrenia or bipolar, like it's a spectrum, right? So I think that's really important.
And thank you for mentioning that. And just for anybody who are not aware of this term mental health, we hear it all the time, but not a lot of people may know about it. Can you actually define what the term mental health is?
Mental health is checking in with what is going on in your head, your brain, your processes, and it ties
Mhm.
in with like your body. So it's literally you checking in with yourself. How are you feeling? What are your moods like? It's not something to like shy away from or be afraid of because hey, how am I feeling? How is this making me feel? Why are certain things a trigger for me? Right. So your mental health is you checking in with your brain to see if everything is good.
Awesome. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, I really like the way you define that. What would you say is some of the challenges that people have experienced with mental health, considering the pandemic? Definitely, mental health has risen. So, can you just elaborate a little bit about what your experience has been like?
For me, it was a lot of anxiety, super anxious of not knowing and not knowing what to expect. And not knowing how long it was going to take. I'm a very like sociable person, so the fact
Yeah.
that we had to be in quarantine and I couldn't
Mm.
interact with people and just see people's smiling faces, like just something
Yeah.
as simple as a smile, that you couldn't get that from people, and
Or
just like
touching, just being able to touch somebody,
yes,
you know what I mean?
it
And
was
have that human connection.
yes, it was weird. It was like it was hard to differentiate, like, hey, I feel like I'm living in like some sort of a twilight zone because this is not the norm for me, this is not what I'm used to. So anxiety and depression is a big thing, and this is something I've had like multiple conversations with friends and family, them not knowing what to expect, but more importantly not knowing how to deal with the sadness of what they're feeling and not interacting with people and getting back to that, and then also losing family members, right? So that was a huge part of like mental health for people. How do they navigate dealing with death, but then not even being able to mourn the death of their loved ones as well? So,
Yeah, or not being able to even attend the funeral so you can, have that conversation with your family members so you guys could be there for one another. I know that's been very challenging for a lot of people. A lot of my friends have had, death in their family and they weren't able to attend the funeral. So we are doing a funeral over Zoom, virtually, just kind of like how we're doing this conversation right now. So it's very challenging. And then to have to cope with it, especially when you're suffering from mental illness, it's been really difficult on people, with the pandemic.
So considering like, how the pandemic has changed a lot of people's lives and they're having, obviously a lot of people are affected by it. What are some like tips that you would recommend for somebody who's dealing with it, but don't know what their next step should be? What are some like, some tips or tricks or things that they can kind of implement to help them cope with whatever they're going through?
I would
Yeah.
say first part of it is identifying what it is that you're feeling and where it's stemming from. Because once you do that, then you can better navigate. So it's like, hey, maybe you need to just take a mental like break for yourself,
Right.
like
Yeah.
journal. Maybe you need to do like a spa day. Like self care looks differently for every single person. So figure out what brings joy to your life, what brings you happiness, and do that thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. What are some, I guess, activities that people can do, to try to cope with whatever it is they're suffering from, whether it's anxiety, depression? Because I think that was the bigger issue for most of the, people, especially us being from Canada. A lot of my friends were just talking about the fact that they're depressed, they're not able to leave their house, they just want to go out and hang out with their friends or just, chill at their friend's place. So some of the things that I suggested to them, I'm not an advocate, but it was just, hey, why don't you guys play a game online or something, where you can virtually connect and see
Yeah.
each other, right?
Mhm.
I don't know, you guys can feel free to jump in, but I thought that was something that kind of was helpful, connect with everybody that you possibly can, create some games that you can all play virtually.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Remember when we were the mentors for the little girls, Chalada, when we were
Yeah,
letting them know on giving them advice on like, getting out there, just taking a walk and,
yeah,
calling their friends or family, getting in touch with people they may not have spoken to in a long time. You know what I mean? To kind of just keep that momentum going, making sure, the well-being of your friends, your family, etc. So I guess
yeah,
getting creative and trying something new every week. We were recommending to our like the little girls because we were
yeah.
mentoring
Would
12
be
year olds,
nice.
right?
Exactly, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. Something you mentioned, Maya, was getting outside too. Like getting outside to do activities, go for a bike ride with someone. Like you can social distance and do things outdoors as well.
Yeah.
Maybe a picnic, journaling, making
Mhm.
yourself a cup of tea,
Yeah.
finding out what works for you. Maybe you like cooking, cook, right?
Right.
A lot of
Right.
what
Yeah.
I said was really important too with
Hmm.
the game nights and making sure you're getting that social interaction, even if it is virtually. That's really
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people were having parties online. Actually, there's like a
Mhm.
soca fete, and
Yeah.
there was like, I guess, concerts. So there are
Mhm.
different ways that you can be more active so you can socialize with your family and your friends, so you're not, cooped up in your house and being depressed. And also working out. I find that because my gym condo is closed, I haven't fallen into depression, but I love to work out. And when I'm not able to work out, I'm annoyed, it frustrates me. So one of the things that I started doing is I bought a skipping rope. I started skipping in my condo. I'm like, my neighbors are going to complain, but who cares? Right. So it's just really doing what works for you, just to get that boost of energy. So definitely.